Welcome to Lead Your Life, the podcast for people who are seeking harmony in business and in life. My name is Debbie Heiser, and I'm an inner mastery and business mindset coach and the chief igniter here at The Lit Up Life. I feel an urgency to help people let go of past messaging so that they can make a lot of money doing what they love without sacrificing what they value most. Welcome. We're glad you're here.
Straight from the corners of my mind is where I find my sanity. It's a place, another land.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser. My name is Debbie Heiser, and I am excited to finish up the topic this month. Well, not to finish, that sounded kind of funny, but this topic around making decisions. And if you haven't listened before, I help entrepreneurs make a lot of money doing what they love to do without sacrificing what's important to them, really understanding what their true identity is, their life's intentions, and moving forward in that space with confidence and ease. So kind of in that realm, we're finishing up. And if you haven't listened to the one before, that's okay. I'll do a quick overview, how we talked about understanding who you are then enables you to move forward and say yes when you mean to say yes. And when you make decisions, when you choose not to decide, that in and of itself is a decision. But then making a decision, how do you move forward from that? What I want to talk about too, and what I started to kind of end was when you're in this indecision moment, what happens is kind of the energy starts to suck out of you. It creates a lot of chaos in your mind, creates stress, lack of sleep, so on and so forth. So what do you do with that? Well, first of all, we weren't meant to be here on our own. So think about 10 people in your life, or 5 people, whatever the number is for you, that you trust, that you know support you. And I'm going to talk about what support means here in just a minute, that you would feel comfortable having a conversation with. Now, this is somewhat consensus decision making or data gathering, where you're gathering some data or opinions from other people. Other times, 80% of the time, I tend to say to people, if it's in using your intuition, if it's in your gut and it feels like a true desire, and same thing with the decision, if it feels like it's a good decision, then step forward with confidence, because as you move forward, as you make those decisions, that continues to build confidence that then continues the upward vibration. And a lot of times what I see people do is they create excuses, right, within the context of where we're at. And this goes for relationships, this goes for business, anything really in your life. And what I mean by that is, even, I was listening to something this weekend on and this person was talking about the relationship that they had with their father. And all of these excuses kind of started to come out, right? Like, I know that he loves me. I know this, or I know that, instead of feeling the feels, right? And it's okay. I think sometimes we try to put such a silver lining on everything that we don't feel the feels. And I want you to understand that when I'm talking about decisions, when I'm talking about desires, when I'm talking about inspired action, I'm not saying ignore the feelings. You have to process through those feelings. And a lot of times I'll hear people making excuses, and I do it too, right? Where we make excuses for things, or why we're doing something or not doing something, which then you're kind of in your adolescent, which I'll talk more about. And I've talked about numerous times how we have this inner committee in our head, or this inner family system. And so when we're making some of those excuses, the excuses are usually fear. And so uncovering and saying, okay, isn't that interesting? Looking through the lens of curiosity, what am I afraid of? Right. And because we live in this rugged individualism world, we don't like to admit sometimes that we have fear, but we do. Right. And as a matter of fact, kind of a weird one, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. I went for a walk with a friend the other day, and we have this trail here called the Bay Trail. And it's right next to the lake. It's beautiful. I do not like to go on this trail in the spring or summer or early fall because there are snakes on that trail. I get that they are garter snakes. I get that they're small in comparison to some. I get all that logically. But it still doesn't take the fear away, right? Like, I've tried this mind over matter. It's a deep-seated thing that I got from my father, who hates snakes as well. And so it was funny because when I picked her up and I said, I'll go on the Bay Trail because it's cold today, but as it warms up, that's not something I'm going to be really excited about doing. And coming to the realization that, yes, it's the snake, but really the piece of it that I don't like is being startled. Right. And that was a revelation, because it was funny because she's like, well, I used to play with them when I was a kid. They're harmless, this and this. And I looked at her and I said, not helpful. Right. Like, I get all that. It's just, it's a fear. And so when I think about an excuse of not going on that trail, it's because I have a fear of snakes. Now, when we think about that, there are certain fears and there's still excuse in that, right? Like, I had a fear of heights. I'm still working on that one, but I've done many, many things to try to get myself, because as I do those things over and over again, the fear lessens, right? So yes, I'll probably end up walking the Bay Trail more to get over my fear of snakes. But the point being is that there's also things that happen within our businesses, right? Like, when I made the decision to start the mastermind that I have going on, I sat on that for about a year and a half and didn't come forward with it. Is it perfect? No, I'm actually changing the model a little bit, but it's easier to move a moving cart than it is one that's standing still, right? If you think about, um, like, anything is easier to keep it moving as long as it's already started. So taking that first step, but I had all sorts of excuses. And I remember, actually, I'm going to go back to a different example of, I don't remember what the decision was, but I was making the decision to wait until after my son's wedding to do something within my business. And my business coach said to me, basically, do you think so-and-so, who's a successful businessman, waits? Like, what's the excuse here? This is just something that you're sitting on because of fear. So let's think about what that fear was, right? And I was just afraid to step in. There were a lot of complexities to it. And, you need people to help you work through this. So thinking about and stepping back and going to yourself and asking people around you. I started this out with saying, who are some people that you trust and that would help you look at whether or not it was an excuse or a solution. Now, I want to talk about support a little bit, because there's this support that looks like codependency, and codependency means that you're either going to someone or they're coming to you, or you jump in and take over for them, thinking they can't do it themselves. Not necessarily that's what your thought is. Your thought might be, oh, I'm helping them, when in fact, that's a rescuer. And you're saying to them, I don't trust that you can do this on your own. It's because you feel like you're going about it thinking you need to fix someone, right? So anyone that's your friend that approaches you when you ask them to listen to you, to bear witness to you, to, whatever it is that you're wanting for them, to provide feedback, whatever, if they're trying to fix you, that's codependent relationships, right? That's codependency. One piece of it. The other side to that is being in a group or having friends that support you, right? They don't. Oh, well, let me back up. The other part of codependency is having friends that will commiserate with you. Now, I'm just as guilty, right? But like, reaching out to people that will commiserate with you or complain with you about that thing. I remember early on in my marriage, hearing all these women always complain about their husbands and all the stuff that they were doing. And if you're a woman that does that today, listen up, because it messes with your brain, and then it messes with your relationship. And I found that other women that I was hanging around with did the same thing, right? Like, oh, just men do that type of thing. Or, can you believe my husband did X, Y, and Z? And just very much in that complaint type of energy. And when we're in that type of energy and commiserating with people, it changes your brain and you start to then look for things that are wrong that your spouse is doing. And the other piece of it is that it messes with your brain so that then you go into this lack mentality. And so look at your friends or look at the people that you have on your board of directors to help you make, like if you want input making your decision. And if they commiserate with you and your excuses, then those are not people I choose to go to. You know, I have a group of people that I reach out to when it comes to certain things. It depends, you know, people are a little different in each category. And they're the people that when I say support me, they trust that I already know the answer inside of me, but need some questions, need some, you know, walking through it, looking at it from a different perspective. That type of behavior is growth behavior. Those are people that support you, right? It's also people that aren't putting you down about what you want to do or trying to keep you in like a safety, like where they feel safe with you. They want you to expand. They want you to, you know, increase your knowledge, your growth in your business, whatever it may be, right? So they help you look at and find solutions within yourself. And that's where we're talking about making the decision, right? Is then you start to go more solution based versus excuse based without fixing. Let's face it, sometimes as an entrepreneur and a business leader, we need some guidance, support, and community. So we here at The Lit Up Life have 3 ways that you can work with us in order to achieve that. As a private client, we work together to quantum leap your business by discovering strategies to help you move past what's holding you back and allow you to identify what you want your life to look like. The result? Your business becomes the conduit to the lifestyle, success, and impact that you intend. Now, I'm a huge believer in the power of collaboration. So in our community masterminds, you can join in with other high vibrational business owners who want to level up, increase impact, and financial gain, all with a tribe of other women to support and encourage you on your journey. Currently, we're accepting application for this women's mastermind group, which is a year-long program for women in business who are ready for that next level of success. We create deep personal awareness in a safe and supportive space where you can experience growth with others who are on that same path. Through weekly sessions with our program coaches, teachings that go beyond the buzzwords, and immersive retreats in places like Mexico, the Dominican Republic, or Belize, we work together to create long-term abundance and lasting impact in your life and business. The last and final way to get involved with us is our group coaching programs. They provide the opportunity for teaching, masterminding, and feeling like you aren't alone on this ride. Come join us. Now, the other thing I want to talk about here, there's 3 or 4 more things here, is really tapping into your intuition. Whenever I'm faced with making a big decision, you know, we're faced with decisions all the time. And frankly, there's times that I have decision fatigue. And so I get why Bill Gates and Obama and other people like wore the same thing, or not Bill Gates, excuse me, Steve Jobs, wore the same thing over and over again, right? It was a small decision that didn't need to take up energy. But I back up a little. Thinking about intuition, like what puts me in touch with my spirit and the universe is being in nature. And whether that's taking a walk and with no other distractions, no dogs, no, you know, drinks or something to eat, you can have something in your backpack, I don't care, but like really going in deep to hear, to listen, to almost in a meditative state, being in nature. And really listening with all of my senses, right? Not just thinking and using brain power, but like noticing things on the trail or, you know, I was having this moment where, when I was thinking about what was coming for me, um, I love elephants and just what they represent in the community that they, build. And I saw this trunk of, or this tree, and it had like a little stick sticking out, kind of pointing down, which is unusual. Usually they kind of point up. And it looked like an elephant ear, like it looked like an elephant. And so for me, I took that as a sign. I think there's things out there that the universe, for me, it's God is trying to tell me all of the time. I just have to open my eyes up to hear it. And so really trusting also your intuition. And I will say, some of you are listening to this today and saying, well, I ask a whole lot of other people before I make a decision. I was there. I used to ask all sorts of people. And part of that was I didn't want to take responsibility for making the decision, because then I was kind of like, okay, well, if 10 people say I should do it and 2 say I shouldn't, then I'm going to go with the majority, versus owning the decision that I was making. I also found too that I didn't trust myself enough to trust my own intuition. And I had to learn to love myself. I had to learn to know who I was. And that goes back to kind of that true identity and our life's purpose or intentions, and like really knowing what I stood for, my values, all of those things helped me gain trust in myself. And so if you're struggling with this idea of trusting your intuition, and intuition to me is that it's kind of that feeling. And I find I have to slow down in order to really like own that intuitive hit sometimes. You might have even noticed my voice has slowed down as I've even touched deeper into my heart and my intuition during this episode. And so if you find that you struggle with that, look for ways that you can trust yourself. Where have you kept commitments to yourself? Where haven't you? I was a little upset with myself because I didn't do my workout last night for the first time. And I had been on a 7-day, like, checking it off that I had done my workout, and I chose not to do a workout. And I woke up this morning kind of beating myself up. And then I was like, whoa, wait a minute, right? Like intuitively, I just knew my body needed a break, and it's okay, right? And so listening to that intuition, but I go back to the commitments to myself. I had broken a commitment to myself, which didn't feel so good, right? And so I had to kind of work through that this morning, and okay, what was the reasoning behind that? And realizing, okay, intuitively, I knew my body just needed a break. I was tired. There was these things that led up to it, but then I had to also look at it and say, okay, were those excuses? And in some cases, and last night was an example of where I had to swallow a tough pill that it was really an excuse. And so it wasn't necessarily, and you even heard me earlier, just a few seconds ago, talk about like, I was giving myself grace and I was intuitive and realized I needed a break. See, like how insidious our brains can be and move us into those pieces. But ultimately, it was really just an excuse. I didn't want to do it. And so then this morning, helping myself realize that, not beating myself up, just realizing what the trigger potentially was. And I figured that out. And now know the next time that happens, but we lose trust in ourselves when we don't keep the commitments to ourselves and to others, right? But so many times I see people not keeping commitments to themselves, and that just spirals us downward. Now, part of that spiraling downward is also, there's a book called The Gap and the Gain. I've talked about it before, where we tend to focus on the gap in the United States. We focus a lot on where we want to go and how far it is for us to get there and what's the gap. And my friends and I joke and say the gap is only a clothing store. And really it's about looking at what's the gain, right? Like, where have I been? Looking at what I've done, and that builds the energy to move forward. It builds the trust in myself to make decisions for myself. It helps me look at all of the things that I've done. It helps me understand what I'm grateful for, and really bringing that forward in a mindfulness manner. And then thinking about too, that sometimes we just hit what's called a terror barrier. Like we've come forward and we've surpassed where we thought we were going to go. And then because our brain is wired to keep us safe, it says, no, back up. We're afraid. We don't know where we're going to go, all of this. And so that's that terror barrier. When I say walked into the excuses and solutions, I probably should have talked about that first. But the point being is that we hit those barriers, right? And because our brain is wired for safety, it's going to look for those excuses or look for the evidence as to why we shouldn't do something or make a decision in a certain way, right? Because it wants to keep us safe. So part of that is looking for evidence in other people, in things that you've done in your past. And so in the last episode, I even mentioned to you, think about times when you've made decisions when it felt really good. It was the flow. You knew it was the right decision. That's evidence in your evidence bank that you know how to make decisions. So if I'm making a decision about stepping forward into something in my business, then I look at other people and how they've done the same thing. I study other people to see what they're doing to be successful. Doesn't mean I'm going to follow exactly what they're doing, but it provides evidence for me that the universal laws work, right? That the universe is for us at all times. And so think about those bank accounts that you have. And some of you, I'm going to out age, but I think of Fred Flintstone back in the days when we used to watch Fred Flintstone in the cartoons, and how he used to have a devil and an angel. And this is just an example, right? Where I think about that when it comes to the evidence, right? And I want evidence, and, regardless of which one is for you, the bank account that keeps you in fear, or the one that moves you forward, or the one that wants to try to keep you safe, which is what creates the fear. Whichever one you want to name that, whether it's the devil or the angel for you, I'll let you decide that. But for me, it was like, that helps me think about, okay, where am I putting this? Am I making this evidence to say, yes, move forward? Or am I making this evidence as an excuse? Or is it data that I just need to look at, right? I had a friend approach me about purchasing something of hers. And at the moment, I was not prepared to do that. I will be in the future. And so I sat on that decision for a little while. And then eventually I looked at it and said, okay, where's the evidence, right? And the evidence is X, Y, and Z. And so moving forward, I know what I'm doing to get to that place where I can purchase that from her. So with that, I've given you a whole lot to think about, and I look forward to chatting with some of you. So if you hear this and want to have a conversation about maybe a decision that you're facing, please reach out. I'd love to do that. And with that, folks, it's a wrap. Have a fantastic day. That's a wrap for this conversation. I'm so glad you've joined us. Remember to subscribe to the podcast so you can catch all of our future episodes, and visit us at thelituplife.com for details on how you can become part of the Lit Up Life community. A quick shout out to my friend Jackie Wilson and her friends, the creators of our amazing theme music. Thanks so much for allowing us to share this perfect song with our listeners. Looking forward to having you listen in to our next episode.